Hi, I'm Teresa from Phoenix Gate Crafts, and today I'm talking about my 5 hot takes. I've been watching a lot of hot take videos lately, and I realized I had a few. Not a lot, and I think most of the time, most people's hot takes are not that hot of a take. Like, these are pretty common, popular opinions. We could call these unpopular opinions as well. So, hot take number 1. I find knitting and crochet and fiber art podcasts to be a bit boring. And this is a couple of different reasons. I don't think I really have an issue with the format per se. Some people it can feel a little pushy and that I should buy these things and I should invest in these things. But that's definitely not an every podcast issue, that's just a few. A slightly bigger issue for me, though, is the quality of the podcast, because so many podcasts are people who are trying to promote their business, whether they dye yarn or do patterns and stuff. They're trying to promote this stuff, and the quality of the video is terrible and the sound quality is awful. I have watched quite a lot of podcasts for knitting stuff, and the video is just blown out. Like, you can't see what the true colors are. So when they're showing you the yarn that they dyed, trying to get you enticed to buy, but they all look the same because their camera is just blown out, I find it very annoying. You're not getting an accurate color representation. And like, it's this dark reddish purpley color, except it looks pure black because everything is so off kilter. I don't like that. I find it very frustrating, especially since they probably have a lot of beautiful colors. I just can't see them. And then the sound quality happens. Sometimes they're talking to their phone or something and it's just too far away. Or more often, they're not projecting their voice. So like right now, you can hear me, I'm projecting my voice. I'm speaking clearly. I am actually filling this whole room with sound. So that way the microphone that is an arm's length away from me can pick up every single sound I make. I'm speaking a little slower than I probably do in normal conversation. And I am making sure to enunciate and move my mouth so that people who are hard of hearing can read my lips. I also play back every video, and although I'm not very good at like adjusting colors in video, I have on occasion adjusted the sound on my videos so that you can hear it better. So things aren't like super duper quiet and then super duper loud. It also bothers me when people talk in hushed tones. It drives me nuts. I understand why they do it, but so many moms seem to do this. The baby is down for a nap, so I'm going to record the podcast. But I don't want to wake up the baby, so I'm talking really quietly, and as a result, nobody can hear me. And so I, as the viewer, have to turn up my sound, and then when it cuts to a commercial, because whether they're monetized or not, YouTube puts commercials on your stuff, all of a sudden the commercial is super ridiculously loud, and it scares my dog. She's right there. She's very cute, but I'm not moving the camera. But I think the biggest problem I have is that so many are just boring because either the inane conversations that I'm not interested in, or just the lack of any interesting stories, the lack of any personality put into it. There's a bit of performing to the camera that has to happen. Like right now, I'm a little bit more exaggerated than I normally would be. I'm talking more animatedly. I'm making bigger gestures and I'm moving around a little bit. And usually if I'm talking, I try to include funny stories, engaging commentary, snarky quips. Because here's the thing. on camera is very much like presenting in front of a small crowd, like a classroom full of people. 70% of what you say is your body language, and 90 to 95% of that does not come across. If you're nervous, chances are nobody can tell that you're nervous when you're doing public speaking or when you're talking to a camera. And if you're not being a little extra animated and telling stuff in a little bit exaggerated tone with exaggerated gestures, it just kind of comes across as lackluster, without energy, like you're tired or you're getting a little sick or something. And it's not fun. It's boring. And I find that because I'm not actually watching the camera, I'm not interested in this. And you can see the difference. And there are some that are good, like the Grocery Girls, for example, have a podcast, but they'll talk for like 2 hours about something, and I'm not a consistent watcher. I get so lost and confused about what they're talking about. So like, I'm not super keen on it. I don't watch very many podcasts all the way through. And I don't know how much of this is just me being picky and how much of it is me being a bitch. Because let's face it, there's a good chance am I the asshole? Yes, I'm the asshole. You know, that's entirely possible. It could also mean that I need to make my own and just make the thing I'm looking for. I don't know if I can do that. I'm not a very exciting or interesting person. But I could try. I don't know. I'm frustrated now. All right, hot take number 2, and this is a minor one. It's a whine. But I hate it when patterns don't tell you the yarn weight and fiber blend of the yarn. Now I understand why they're doing this, because they were sponsored to use that yarn. They made a pattern for that yarn and they better use that yarn. I get it. It makes sense. But you can totally put this yarn, color options, and yarn weight and fiber and yardage and meterage, just like so that somebody in the future can easily find a replacement, or at least to make sure that they're getting the right one. Because, for example, Knit Picks has several yarns. Wool of the Andes, for example, they have for sure sport weight, worsted weight, and bulky weight. I don't remember if they have DK weight. They very well might. And which one did you get? I need to know. The bigger problem, though, is that a lot of yarns become discontinued. It isn't necessarily the fault of the designer or anything, or the company, the manufacturer, or the yarn dyer. It's just that sometimes there are limited editions that were used for this pattern and this pattern only, or there's a company, it's not doing so well. They're thinking that sponsoring a pattern will get more people buying the yarn, which does work to a certain extent, and they wind up going out of business, or they just realize they've got too many products and too many product lines and they need to cut down, or the product winds up not doing well and they wind up have to cut it from the line. Like, lots of reasons for yarn to discontinue. And not all yarn companies are big enough to make it onto yarnsub.com, which if you ever need to, you can totally go on there and get recommendations for yarn substitutions. Sometimes I just don't friggin' want to use that yarn. I want to shop my stash and I want to know what kind of yarn that is without having to do a ton of research, so I can just shop what I got to see if I've got something close enough. And yarn weight, fiber, and yardage help me with that, because if it matches on all of those, you know, that's a really good substitute for the yarn that's supposed to be used. I mean, I also say this as somebody who does design my own patterns, and although I do put the yarn I used for the sample in the pictures, I also say the weight and everything. Hot take number 3. I don't hate any knitting techniques. And I'm willing to bet you actually don't either. But I'm only betting imaginary money, like 5 imaginary bucks. I'm not. So here's my thought process on this. I'm a math tutor. And pretty much every single one of my students, when I meet them, because they're having trouble in math, I ask them, what's your favorite subject? It's usually recess, PE, or English. And what do you hate? Math. Why do you hate math? It's hard. It's always because it's hard. And here's the funny thing. The students that work with me for a long time, and we fill in the gaps in knowledge and they start understanding the math. Don't worry, my dog's right here. If you hear some clinking and stuff, it's her. We tend to not like things that are hard. Now, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Is it hard because we don't like it, or do we not like it because it's hard? Usually we don't like it because it's hard. And the feelings when something is hard that we feel are frustration that builds to irritation, that builds to anger, and the desire to cry and throw something across the room. So most of the time when I think somebody hates something when it comes to knitting, crochet, Tunisian crochet, cross stitch, embroidery, kind of any fiber art, it's usually because they either suck at it or it's something that's tedious they just don't want to do because it's one extra step. I find a lot of people who knit continental, for example, really hate purling. And this is because when you are knitting continental and you want to purl, because you're kind of like this with your knitting, and you kind of have to go in and push your fingers down to kind of do it. And it's this awkward movement to try and get the purl done properly so you don't wind up with any twisted stitches. And it's awkward and it's uncomfortable. You know, and my least favorite thing is knit 2 together. I always have trouble getting through that first of the 2 loops, because if I can get into that, I can do the whole entire thing. But I have trouble with it. So here's my recommendation. If you hate something that's like a stitch or something, especially if it's something that shows up all the time, do a swatch and practice it. Just do an entire like 4-inch square washcloth that is just purl stitches. Or, you know, start with a wide, about this wide swatch, and just do the knit 2 togethers until you've got your little T. It really doesn't matter. Just practice more than what the pattern is requiring of you. So that way you get it down. You get really comfortable with it. And you know what you're doing, and you see that instruction and you're just like, okay, I do it. You're never probably gonna love it, but you will probably grow to not hate it. It's just kind of a part of life and something you have to do if you really enjoy this craft. And the reason I say we don't hate it, we have this habit of saying, oh my gosh, I just hate it, when we really don't mean we hate it. We just don't like it. It's not fun. It doesn't bring us pleasure, so therefore we must hate it. But here's the thing with hate. Hate is a deep, serious, real feeling that I don't think many of us experience towards a craft. Real life hatred and bigotry and everything, that's real stuff. That's real, that is very severe. That's not this conversation either. But if you truly hated something, like for reals hated it in your craft, you probably wouldn't do the craft. Like that's a permeating thing. And I don't think most people really feel that intensely about a craft thing. I think it's mostly frustration. And the other cause of frustration is doing something tedious. Like the notorious thing is weaving in ends at the end of a project. Or with cross stitching, it's the back stitching at the end. You know, you've got your piece and you do the back stitching. It's always that one extra step that's just, you want to wear it, you want to wash it, you want to block it, you want it to be done and ready to use. And you have to do this one last thing. Well, my suggestion for this is figure out ways around it. So for example, weaving in ends. If you're crocheting, that's easy. Just work over your tails, you're good. Knitting's a little trickier, but if you can, what I do is I do knitting 2 strands of the same color together, and then I'll do weave-in Stevens at the same time with the leftover strand. I'll do that for about 5 or so stitches, and then I'll weave in Steven the other tail for about 3 or 4 stitches, and then I'll just cut everything real close and nothing comes undone. If you're changing colors, just weave in Steven. Just weave in Steven as much as possible. If you're doing lace, good luck. May the odds be ever in your favor. That one does suck. But I bet you don't hate it, it just sucks. Hot take number 4. I am okay knitting or crocheting with black yarn. It is the most hated thing, and I don't blame you. But there are some tricks to making it not so bad. The first biggest one is be in a well-lit room. This isn't just a matter of like having a headlamp pointed at your stuff. It is actually, you need several sources of light. For example, right now I have a lamp right over there. You can see it in my glasses. I can see it in my glasses. And I've got one over there. And as you can see, there's not much in the way of shadows. Like, there's a little bit, but not very much. Yeah, this one is causing a shadow over here. But it's not very much, and you want good lights. Do not get mood lighting. You should never be crafting anything detailed in mood lighting. It is not good for your eyes anyway. Having bright as daylight light is the best for your eyes because there's no strain going on. You want at least 100 watt light bulbs. Ideally 150 watt 3-way light bulbs. That way if you want the mood lighting or lower light because you're watching a movie and you just need to be able to see when you get up to go to the refrigerator. But when you're crafting 100 to 150 watts, enough light to brighten up a room. Although natural light going out on a sunny day is the best. Because here's what happens with dark yarn. It's not just black, it happens with like navy blues and intensely dark purples and stuff. You know, the so dark reds that they're almost black kind of deals, or dark grays even. I don't know if you've noticed, but if you look like right here, there's no black line. There's a little bit of shadow underneath. I'm also wearing clothing underneath. But it doesn't have a black line going from the purple to my skin. It has just the purple stops and my skin tone begins. And because of this, the way we see a lot of depth and a lot of like stitch definition is because we're seeing the shadows in the curvature of the yarn. And because of that, with dark yarn, we can't see the shadows very well. They blend in with the natural color of the yarn, so that's why we don't see it very well. A very brightly lit room helps. The next thing that's surprising is make sure you have new glasses. You probably noticed I have new glasses from when I was last posting like 2.5 years ago. Long time no see. But I had to get a new prescription. It'd been 4 years. It'd been 2 years since COVID and like 3 years of COVID. And I wound up really needing a new prescription. And I didn't realize how much I just wasn't seeing because I couldn't see it. Like I took up cross stitching, which is why I bring it up now. But I couldn't see the dots. I kept miscounting. There is a, that one right there, that's a cross stitch. I kept miscounting, and it'd just be like one stitch would be off, but that would be the stitch I would base the whole next section of stitches on, and everything would be screwy, and I'd have to frog and take out a whole bunch of stuff. And it was a mess. So I got new glasses and all of a sudden I could see the holes. I could see my knitting so much better. I could identify single crochets and count rows and crochet a lot better. It's just being able to see helps so much. So if you haven't been to the eye doctor in a while, highly recommend if you can afford it. But the third thing is don't read your stitches too much. A certain amount, yes, try, get it into the good light and pull your knitting or crochet apart. But honestly, the way I do it is with counting. I know I have to do 32 stitches of knit 2, purl 2, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 are knit stitches, 3 and 4 are purl stitches, and I will just say 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It just becomes this kind of mantra in my head of the pattern that I am doing. I do this on socks. It's my go-to. And it just becomes, I do that automatically. I know 1 and 2 are knits and 3 and 4 are purls. And I'm doing that, usually whispered under my breath. And I'm not fully paying attention, but it keeps me on track for a repetitive pattern. If you've got anything more complex, well, one, don't bother with texture on super dark yarn. Most cables probably don't show up very well anyway, and textures. If you've got a repeat, have beginning of repeat and end of repeat stitch markers so that you can do it by counts. And if you're recounting to make sure you're in the right place, you don't have to go back all the way to the beginning of the round or the row. And one last one, having needles that are not the same color or not close to the same color as your yarn. This is where having either light colored bamboo needles or stainless steel or some kind of a bright color knitting needle or crochet hook or something is going to come in handy, because then you can see your loops even if you can't see your stitches. Oh yeah, I forgot crochet. Crochet, just kind of get used to doing it by feel. You can kind of feel the different parts of your stitch and you can find where you're going to go into next. That's a handy skill to have if you ever do go blind. And last thing, real quick, before I lose power. Knitworthy is a comment on the gifter, not the receiver. And this one I'm going to get a lot of flack for, I'm pretty sure. Because here's the thing, the word knitworthy means that the other person is worth the effort of knitting for them. And here's the thing, I feel that if you have a friend or a family member that you love, I don't care about the family members you're neutral on or the family members you hate. They don't count. You're not doing this shit for them anyway. But if you love someone, friend or family, they are worth it for you to knit them something. The thing is, it is the job of the gifter to make sure that whatever gift they give the receiver is a good gift. So for example, if your mom loves daisies and she hates daffodils, you wouldn't give her daffodils, right? You'd give her daisies. I feel it's the same way when crafting for somebody. You need to know that they're going to like and appreciate the gift. You need to make sure that it's something that they can't fuck up. So like, my personal policy is whenever I give handmade gifts, if it's something wearable, it needs to be machine washable because they will not machine wash it. Most people don't hand wash on a regular basis. It's not common practice anymore. Making sure it's a fiber that can go in the washing machine is super important. Making sure that the gift has a good texture and feel. Some people do feel that color is more important than feel, but I'm willing to bet that over 75% of recipients will deal with something that's not quite the right color if it feels lovely. If you can hit both, of course, that's ideal, but it isn't always. Making sure that it is in a color palette or a style or something that they would want to use. For example, if there's a couple that have a monochrome white and gray living room, don't give them a rainbow colored Afghan. They're not going to put it on their couch. You probably want something with subtle tones of gray, and intricate color work might be more their style. Because here's the thing, I still see this all the time. It drives me nuts. Somebody in a Facebook group will post that they spent all this time, effort, and money on this wonderful gift, and the other person didn't even say thank you. Yeah, the other person was rude in not saying thank you, but did you consider what they wanted in a gift? And you know, sometimes somebody doesn't want knit or crochet gifts. Like my mom, for reals, doesn't like it when I knit or crochet her anything, except maybe some cute little pot holders on occasion. My mom, though, absolutely loved this stupid ass cross stitch I made for her. Like, it was a free pattern. It was flowers. It wasn't that intricate. It took me maybe 2 evenings. And she thought it was amazing and art. And I had it framed. She made me sign and date the frame because she loved it and wanted to have it as a memory. Never had that response to anything I ever crocheted before. Pot holders were like, these are cool. Can you make me some in these colors? But that is the most I ever got with like knitting or crochet. And the last several years, please don't make me anything. But then I made a little cross stitch poinsettia and she loved it and thought it was beautiful. So knitting and crochet is just not her thing, but she loves cross stitch. Me as a gift giver, my best interest to spend my time, effort, and money for her, because she's worth it no matter what, is to cross stitch something for her instead of knitting it. You get my point here? Especially since the receiver has no control over the gift. You're the one as the gift giver who has the control. So anyway, I hope I didn't piss y'all off too much. If you agree or disagree with any of my hot takes, please post them in the description. I'd love to hear your opinions. Please keep it civil. I realize these are hot takes. Most people probably don't agree with me, and that is A-okay. But let's just be nice to each other. And happy crafting. Bye.